Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Retro Filmation Wave 4 from Super7. This is a really solid wave of figures here, and I'm very excited to take a look at them here today. But as it stands right now, this is also the final wave of these 5.5-inch retro-styled action figures from Super7. So it's going to be really cool to take a look at these, but also a little bittersweet because this could be the last wave of these we ever get. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video, but for now, let's take a look at the packaging on these guys. This particular series has some really cool figures in it. So here's what we got. We've got Filmation version of Evil Lyn. We've got Shadow Weaver for the first time in the 5.5-inch scale. We've got Buzz Off based on his appearance in the original series. We've got Stratos, and we've got Evil Seed. So each of these figures comes on this amazing retro-styled packaging, which I've gushed about in every one of these videos so far, but I just think they're so awesome. Evil Seed here is really a standout in this wave because he's never had a figure in the 5.5-inch style at all, but he did appear in the original cartoon series, so it's pretty cool to see him get this like a retro-style figure as if he was finally made for the original toy line. You can see behind the figures in the packaging, we do have kind of like a mock mini comic, which is actually just an art card, but it still looks very cool. Got that great classic look there. And then when you spin these around to the backside, each one of them not only has a vintage style cross sell with a cool little blurb showing you how to use their action features just like on the vintage toys, but we also get amazing artwork at the top of the cards, which is very much inspired by what we got from Errol McCarthy on the vintage toy line. I think it is absolutely fantastic and one of the highlights of these retro style figures for sure. But let's go ahead and get these guys ripped open and take a closer look at the figures within. So before we jump in and look at all of the figures, each of these do come packaged with these very cool little art cards. These essentially just take the place of the mini comics from the vintage toy line. We've seen these with all of the figures so far here from Super7, and they're very cool. So the front of each of these cards has some beautiful artwork on there. So we got a nice Evil Lyn by Emiliano Santalucia, and the back has got a very cool From Toy to Toon blurb, which shows you the evolution of the vintage toy, and then early concept for the animation, and then the final animation from the Filmation cartoon. It's really cool stuff. So we got that one for Evil Lyn. We've got a Stratos here, which is fantastic. And again, look at that. So we've got the toy, we got the sketch for Stratos, we've got the cartoon version. We've got a Buzz Off piece of artwork by Eamon O'Donoghue. And the back again has got toy, the very different looking concept art for Buzz Off. He's much more human here, which is kind of, I think, what the old toy was actually going to be originally too. And then that's the final for the cartoon. And then it's a little different with characters like Evil Seed and Shadow Weaver, because they did not have toys in the vintage line. So instead, you just get some different concept art there, which is very cool. You can see kind of this early sketch here for Shadow Weaver, and then the final toon sketch. So I like these. These are very nice little inclusions with the figure. All right, so we'll take a look at each of these figures one by one. We will kick things off with Buzz Off, and I'll go ahead and bring this tape measure in here for the first one. These do all stand in that 5.5-inch mark, the 5.5-inch, just like the vintage toy line. And what we've seen with all of these, since they're based on the animation, they're a lot less detailed. They're a little more smooth. They don't quite have all the intricacies and the detailed sculpts and everything, because they're supposed to look more like the animation. So that's what we capture with Buzz Off here, who did have a bit of a different look from the vintage toy. I love the look of this one. This was one of the ones I was most excited about in this wave, just because I thought it was a very cool look for a toy. Now, he does have kind of that glossy plastic used on the arms, kind of on the yellow parts there as well. I know some folks have been pretty down on the glossy plastic, so I am just pointing it out so you can see that they do have that plastic there, but otherwise I feel like it's a very solid feeling toy. The articulation is just like on the vintage, where you can turn the head left and right. You can move the arms up and down. The waist has got a spring in there, so you got the power punch thing going on. And then the legs have hinge joints instead of the rubber bands like on the vintage line. And Super7 has really nailed these on the most recent figures here. They were a little wonky on the first wave or so, but they've definitely gotten a lot stronger and a lot more sturdy on these figures. Buzz-Off feels nice and solid and feels really good. So the wings are really interesting. The way they did these is they're actually just little pegs. On the original one, he had kind of those rubbery wings that you can fold up and down. They had the little dial in the middle there. So these are just individual pegs, so you could pop those off if you want to. In fact, you have to attach them yourself once you first pull them out of the packaging. But of course, you can move those still up and down, so that way if you want to pose them with like the wings kind of more down or outwards, it works just fine. And one of the other things that's really unique here with Buzz-Off is he comes with an interchangeable head, something we don't really see on these figures too often. So there's a little peg there, we can pop that head right off, we can put the new head on in its place, and now we've got Buzz-Off with his helmet down, like the shield over his eyes. I thought that was a really cool way to pull that off. On the vintage toy, he did have a little helmet that like sat on top of his head, so I think that works out really well. It's two different ways you can display the figure. Now he also comes with two accessories. First up, he's got this cool little lance type weapon from the animation, but he also comes with the cool little brown axe, which is very similar to what his vintage toy had. So it kind of pays homage to that. They are both very solid plastic. You can see there's really no flexibility. They're kind of that same glossy, shiny plastic. And my nitpick here with these is that he's got those claw hands, just like the vintage toy, and the wrists don't turn, which to be fair, they didn't on the original toy, but I kind of wish they would have went ahead and gave us some swivels at the wrists, because while he doesn't really hold on to these too well, like he can kind of squeeze it between the claws, he's always going to be holding his weapon sideways. And I even tried to do kind of like what you can do with the vintage toy and like fit the hand guard there over the claw, but it almost doesn't even really work with this particular version of Buzz-Off because his claws are so much bigger. So it's the same with the lance. Like he's just always going to hold his weapon sideways. So that is a bit of a bummer. But aside from that, he's a pretty great looking action figure. Next up, we've got Stratos. Again, he's got a bit of a different look in the animation. They definitely did a good job of giving him kind of almost that stockier look here. The face and everything just kind of has this more round look to it. And it's really cool. Now, again, very, very glossy. You can really see the way my lights are reflecting off of it. But he looks really good. The colors are bright and vibrant. Definitely has that more animated appearance to it. You can see he's got the little blue jetpack on. Very similar to the original toy. And the way they did his feathers is really interesting because he just kind of has these loose clamps. You can see it's like loose plastic there, but they clamp onto the arms just fine and they stay on his arms. So that actually works pretty good, especially like the vintage toy. They actually pop off. Well, look, I just bumped it with my finger and it fell off. But anybody that has the vintage toy knows that those little pegs come off and the wing, you can lose the little armbands pretty easy. So hopefully these will hold up just fine over time. I just keep bumping it with my fingers though and knocking it off, so I do worry about it getting a little too loose. But when it's on there, it looks fine. We just got to get it up over the, there we go, get it up over the bicep, and it stays. So Stratos has got himself two different accessories here. First of all, he's got the Staff of Avion. This is the one that's kind of got the little like green egg, like the jade egg at the top of it. Holds onto it very nicely with his right hand because he does have a nice gripping hand there, which is very, very cool. And if you don't want that Staff of Avion, just like his Classics counterpart, he's also got the mini comics version of the Staff of Avion. So pretty cool that we get both of those versions of that accessory with this figure. All right, let's bring it on over to Evil Lynn, who personally I think looks really, really good. And I think a lot of people are going to be a big fan of this one because, of course, the thing that really makes her stand out from the vintage toy in the original cartoon there was that she didn't have that neon yellow skin like the old toy did. And then she's got the purple outfit on there, purple and like light blue, and she's got a cool cloth cape, which is kind of like that old school like little ring that just clips around the neck. It's got that very like 80s, early 90s kind of feel to it, but it works really well. I love the look of this one. I think she looks fantastic. It still kind of holds true to that vintage look of the female figures in Masters of the Universe, where she's got like the one arm with like the palm hand, like the hand sticking straight down, the way her legs are kind of shaped and everything. Very much like the Teela figure we already got from Super 7, but I just think she looks really, really great. She's also got the bigger headdress as well, just like in the animation. So she actually comes with 2 different wands, much like with Buzz Off there. She's got one that is more based on the cartoon, but then she's also got one that is based on what her original toy came with. And it's definitely different than the one from the vintage toy, but it's all solid blue, so it's definitely meant to kind of pay homage to that. So whichever wand you want to pose her with, you've got both of those options there. And then she also comes with another cool little artifact from the cartoon. It's a Korodite crystal. That's awesome. It's just really cool. That's something we've seen, in the various cartoons, not just the Filmation one. But this is really cool because it's like a translucent pink plastic. It really reminds me of the dilithium crystals from the Playmate Star Trek The Next Generation line. Any of you who had those know exactly what I'm talking about. It is different, obviously, but that's what it reminds me of. Still, she can't really hold it or anything, but it's a neat accessory. It's very cool that it's included with her. Okay, so that brings us to Shadow Weaver, which is arguably one of the most exciting figures in this wave, because she is certainly a character that people wanted in the vintage line, and she was never there, so it's like a wrong has finally been righted with this figure. And she's very unique, too, because since she's got that robed body, instead of giving her, like, the Evelyn or the Teela body there, they actually just sculpted this whole lower half that looks like her robe, so she's actually looks perfect. I mean, she looks like Shadow Weaver from the animation there. One thing I also really like is they included the cool little translucent flight stand, which plugs into this peg. That way we've got the little kind of hovering look for her. Something that I wanted to see with Orko. I kind of wish Orko would have got something like that too, but I'm glad they did it for Shadow Weaver. I think she looks fantastic. So she does still have that very glossy look to her like we've seen with the other figures, but otherwise I think the design is really, really great. I think it's really cool how they handled the cape on the back. So the back cape there is like the cloth, and it looks really cool, but it's not like attached to her arms or anything like the Classics figure was. I think it looks really, really great. Another interesting note here, they did still work in the Power Punch feature, so she's got the spring-loaded waist, and it works really good with this figure. The head slightly turns, but it is hindered because of the sculpt of the hood that she's wearing, but one thing that they did do is they added wrist swivels, something that I wish they put on Buzz Off, but still, you can swivel her wrists around. She's kind of got like a nice spell-casting hand, and to go right along with that, we've got a couple different accessories. So we've got the Wand of Crystal, it's like her little wizard's wand there, or her spellcasting wand. I said wizard's wand, but actually this one right here is the wizard's wand. So these are actual, artifacts from the cartoon series, which is very cool. It's really neat that she comes with those. So both are included with the figure there, and I think she looks really great. So now we can pair her up with Hordak, which we've already got, or you can put her with your vintage Horde figures if you want to, but I think it's pretty awesome that we finally have a 5.5 version of Shadow Weaver. And that is going to bring us to the strangest inclusion of them all, and that's Evil Seed. This was a character that was created specifically for the original cartoon series. You can see he's much taller. He's actually over 6 inches because of his unique design. And since he was created specifically for Filmation, well, he just has a very different look than the others. Most of the figures all shared the same basic body. So he is not the big, overly muscular guy. He's a cloaked figure, very similar to Shadow Weaver, and they handled him similar, where his body is all just a solid plastic. So you can see no feet or anything like that on the bottom. Just like kind of like this. It's actually hollowed out too. You can tell it's hollowed out, but it's made of that same kind of hard plastic. It is glossy. They added swivels at his wrists as well, just like with Shadow Weaver. He looks great. I mean, if you like the character from Filmation, it's really cool getting this figure of him. It does just look really strange putting him next to the other 5.5 figures because he's a little out of place, but to be fair, it was a Filmation created character, so that always would have looked a little out of place compared to the squat buff style of the vintage Mattel toys. So it comes with a few accessories here, much like his Classics counterpart. He does have a cool little vine attachment here. So that actually just fits right over his hand, where it looks like his hand is turned into the vines. It is very cool. You can see how it just plugs onto his hand there. But it also comes with this shield. which is interesting. So he can hold on to that shield there as well. And that will complete the look of this particular Evil Seed. So yeah, very, very different looking choice for a character, but it's really cool. It's cool getting some of the wacky, weird characters from Filmation in this vintage figure style. All right, guys, it's comparison time. So I'm going to go ahead and stand a lot of these guys alongside their vintage figure counterparts so you guys can get a look at them. So like, you know, putting Evil Lynn next to her vintage counterpart, you can really see the difference there with like the skin tones especially really make her stand out as a very different looking figure. Putting Stratos alongside his vintage counterpart. And then if we can bring it on over to Buzz-Off, who also looks very different. He actually looks a little smaller than the vintage figure, but it's really cool seeing the differences between them there. With Shadow Weaver, since she didn't have a figure in the vintage line, I'm going to go ahead and stand her alongside her Masters of the Universe Classics counterpart. That way you can see the difference there. There's definitely a huge difference with the colors. You know, they really darkened up the one for Classics to make her fit more in with those figures rather than being a cartoon figure, but this one is a straight up Filmation figure. And I should be doing the same thing for Evil Seed, but oh, I dug everywhere. I couldn't find my Evil Seed. I apologize, guys. But there you guys go. There is a look at the new wave of Masters of the Universe 5.5-inch retro figures as seen on TV in the Filmation animated series. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is it. This is the final wave of 5.5-inch scale action figures from Super7, at least for now. It's very possible that they might come back with these somewhere down the road, but these have been stopped since Mattel is now launching their own 5.5-inch retail line in 2020 called Masters of the Universe Origins. That puts an end to this particular Filmation lineup right here. It's a bit of a shame. I am excited for Origins from Mattel, but I do really feel like Super7 was really finding their stride with these, and I think some of the Filmation versions were very cool in this style. And this right here is a pretty neat assortment of figures. So these were sold through pre-order through Super7, which is where I got mine. I bought mine through pre-order there, but you can still pick them up now at various other online stores. Places like Big Bad Toy Store should have them in stock still right now, so happy hunting, my friends. Hey guys, thank you so very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, my friends.